Where to even begin talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once? Even saying the title of this movie is going to take up some time because it is a long title, but it's such a great title that I'm going to say the full title every time. There's almost too much going on in that film to really be able to fully unpack it. I'm definitely not going to cover everything. Everything Everywhere All at Once in this review. I've been a fan of Michelle Yeoh since the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon era, and was very excited to see her kind of re-enter the mainstream with the film Crazy Rich Asians about, 4 years ago now. And if anybody hasn't seen Crazy Rich Asians, especially if you are a fan of romantic comedies, it is just so good. And especially during Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, definitely a must-watch. It was largely an all Asian cast, which is sadly very rare, especially on the scale that film was. And it's just a gorgeous movie. I mean, John Chu, who's the director of the film, he really knows how to capture the color and the extravagance of a place. Sorry, I won't... This is not a review about Crazy Rich Asians, but I just go off on tangents because I loved that movie. But I was watching an interview recently with the cast of Everything Everywhere All at Once, and they were talking to Huy Quan, who I will spend a little bit of time talking about in this review as well, because he was wonderful in Everything Everywhere All at Once. He was actually talking about how after having some success as a child actor in these very little films called Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies, playing kind of caricature versions of himself, which I really don't want to go into the racism and the xenophobia that exists within the film industry too far in this review, because I want to focus on all the great things that this film is, rather than the years and decades of time that this representation hasn't been happening, even though it is significant that it's happening now, and that is part of what this review is about. But I don't want to harp on that too much. It'll just take me into a negative space, and I want to stay in the happy place. But anyway, so Huy Quan was talking about how the roles for Asian characters started to dry up, and he got into his 20s, and there weren't a lot of calls coming in for him to go audition for things, especially at the rate that his white counterparts were finding success. So he kind of put it on the back burner, kind of gave up for a bit, didn't really see that there was a place for him in the industry anymore. And it wasn't until 2018, when Crazy Rich Asians came out, that he started to feel a little bit more hope again. And he mentioned that he had a little bit of like FOMO about not being involved in that project, because it just seemed like such an important film and just a fun time and a great group of people working together. And I really do think that it kind of set the stage for, there is an audience for this type of film, and people want more stories like this. People of Asian heritage are seeing themselves on screen, and in a genre that we don't get to see enough of Asian American representation, or just Asian representation in general in the rom-com genre, especially on like such a widespread mainstream platform. And then within a couple years, we also had the success of the film Parasite, which, again, I'm not going to talk about Parasite on this, but it is great. It's intense. It's a bit of a thriller, but it's also just so smart and funny, and very much a genre-bending thing that Bong Joon-ho put together. And the cast is amazing, and it deserves all of the accolades and awards that it received, both at the Oscars and several other film festivals around the globe. But I think that there's definitely been an uptick in recent years of Asian filmmakers getting to tell more authentic stories and finding an audience, even if it starts out being something that like with Parasite, it was this foreign film from South Korea that started out being this like indie darling at a few different festivals, and people started picking up on it, and then it started getting a wider and wider release, and by the time we got to the award season, it was up for some huge awards, and it won. And especially recently, I feel like there's been sort of this resurgence, or maybe not resurgence, I think it might be the first time that like indie films are getting more cred. More people are branching out in the type of cinema that they consume. And I think a lot of it probably has to do with streaming platforms and things being more accessible to people. For decades, the only way to see these kind of indie films was at more artsy movie theaters or film festivals that like not everybody gets to attend. That's why these become like cult classics, because there's not as many people seeing this kind of movie. And I think that Everything Everywhere All at Once is another film like that, that it, in a lot of ways, it is an indie film, and it has that sort of undefinable genre-bending thing going on that makes it hard to fit it into mainstream media. But because of the way that people have become more welcoming and have actually been wanting and searching for unique stories and narratives that take place in worlds that they are unfamiliar with, whether that be supernatural or just a foreign country or a lived experience that they don't know. I think that's also because, you know, society in general is trying to be more open and tolerant for the most part, still having some issues there. But I think there's really this appetite now for more stories, for more personal stories, for weird stories. I just think that there's so much potential out there to find your niche, and it's very exciting to me that we can have films like Everything Everywhere All at Once that reach such a widespread audience because there's so much going on in it, rather than it being like a polarizing thing, that there's too many things happening to keep up with, and so then it makes less people want to go see it. Instead, I think it's having the opposite effect. When the trailer came out, the way it was being advertised was it was Michelle Yeoh's new role, and Michelle Yeoh had, because of Crazy Rich Asians, because of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which I could also do a whole video about and might at some point because it's a great movie. Yet again, more Asian representation. She's become a household name again, just like Huy Quan had struggled to find roles over the years and really just kind of like left the industry for a bit. Michelle Yeoh was kind of still working, but definitely had not had the same success that she did back when she was doing like Crouching Tiger. And so I love seeing her come back into the fore and having her exploring different types of roles and showing her range. But when this trailer came out, it was like, this is Michelle Yeoh's new thing, and it has to do with a multiverse. It was one of the things where you watch the trailer and you're still really not sure what's going on. And the creative team behind it, the Daniels, I did see Swiss Army Man, which was a weird movie, as it's meant to be. But it was also really kind of sweet at times. Like, it was very funny, and yeah, it's so bizarre. Daniel Radcliffe is playing a corpse that farts, and it's about friendship and loneliness and all this kind of stuff as well. And again, I'm not going to do a review about Swiss Army Man on this, but that was my frame of reference for the Daniels. So I knew that they had this ability to take a really bizarre idea and make something kind of tender and sweet out of it that still honored the weirdness that they wanted to put into there, all the creativity that they had to create these kind of almost magical realism moments within these more mundane story worlds. Because you have such a kind of bizarre plot going on, it allows the actors who are in the film to get to explore a range of different things that they can do. It's probably a really exciting challenge for the actors to get to step into those roles. And this one, yeah, everybody in this one really got to show some range. I'll start with Michelle Yeoh. Michelle Yeoh. One of the things about Michelle Yeoh that is so intriguing to me is that she pretty much does her own stunts. She started out as a dancer, and so she had this kind of athletic prowess when she was approaching a role, and so she started by doing like action films with like Jackie Chan and things like that back in like the 80s, and that led to her doing action stuff in a lot of her work. And so when she kind of came back into the fore in Crazy Rich Asians, it was great to see her on screen and she was really good in the character, but I was like missing that action stuff. And then the next thing that I saw her in was Last Christmas, which again, she played a non-action character. She was hilarious in that movie though, and definitely got to be like the comic relief, which was fun, especially after being the antagonist in Crazy Rich Asians. But again, not action. So it was when Shang-Chi came out that I got really excited because we got to see her do action again. And then the trailer for this movie came out and I was like, yes, more action from Michelle Yeoh. So that was really wonderful to get to see her do some fight scenes kind of throughout the movie. It wasn't just like one fight scene. It was like she kind of got to really show her stuff. It was great. There's a little bit of like an ageism thing there with stunt work and with action. There's not a lot of women her age who would get to play a role like this. And so I love that the Daniels created this character. And they've kind of talked about how like they basically created a character that only Michelle Yeoh could play. So I'm just glad that they all kind of were able to come together and put this together because it was just wonderful. It was wonderful to get to see her doing stunts again. And especially any of the sequences that she had where she had to fight Jamie Lee Curtis. I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't think I've seen her in an action movie before. I've mainly only watched her in like comedies. Freaky Friday comes to mind. And this was also a role where she was playing an antagonist and a very exaggerated person in a lot of the worlds that she was in. She kind of stretched her comedy chops to play these kind of larger than life villain characters. But there were also these really like tender moments, especially between her and Michelle Yeoh in the hot dog finger world. It really depends on the audience that you're with, because when you have these more tender moments and they're in these kind of ridiculous scenarios, you're like seeing them with their hot dog fingers and whatever, you get audience members laughing, and it can kind of ruin the mood of that moment that was supposed to be really tender and sweet. And some people, you know, they're not mature enough to really be able to take that in. But I still was able to like appreciate those scenes because I feel like there was really a message in the film about how kindness can be its own weapon against everything else, against hostility, against all of the craziness that's going on. If you can just take the time to connect with someone, and instead of fighting with violence or responding in a proportional way with anger or fury, if you can kind of flip it on its head and find a way to have them see the best parts of themselves and show that you see the best parts of them, and lead with caring and comfort rather than stabbing and guns and fighting, that you can actually save the world. It's a really powerful message, especially right now with how everything is going right now in the world, in the country. And in particular, I'll talk about Huy Quan now, because his character in the film was just the sweetest, just most wholesome person, and you just really felt for him, especially in like the original world that they were in, where they're running the laundromat. And you can see he really just wants to be loved and to love and connect, and that he loves his life, and he wishes that his wife were just more present with him. And he can so effectively play that version of that character that when the switch sort of flips and he becomes the sort of mentor that's helping Michelle Yeoh's character through the multiverse and all of this stuff, and he's very direct and confident and skilled. One of my first takeaways from this film was that I think that Huy Quan and this film have done for fanny packs what Tangled did for frying pans. Because that scene where Huy Quan takes off the fanny pack, you can already envision what's about to happen. but it's still just as good, if not better, than everything that you would have pictured happening, with the way that he's able to like wield this fanny pack as a weapon, and then like buckles it back after, and it's just like you're watching this and you're just like, did that just happen? And you're like, yes it did, and it was amazing. And again, it's just like the creativity that the Daniels have to come up with some of these fight scene solutions, and just kind of paint with a broad paintbrush on all the different things that are possible in all these different worlds. Yeah. I loved that, like, sort of the climactic moment is when Michelle Yeoh's character decides to respond with kindness and is inspired by all the different ways that her husband has been trying to communicate to her about how powerful kindness can be. And I love, too, that we get to see these little flashes of the way that he uses his words and empathy in order to connect with people and to get the outcome that they want, particularly with Jamie Lee Curtis's character and all of the taxes stuff that's a problem. But of course, sort of the main arc of the film is the mother-daughter dynamic, the lack of acceptance there that she has, particularly for her daughter's sexuality. What's interesting to me about this film is that it's not just specifically about that. It's not like they're hammering it into you that this is about a mother not accepting her daughter and her daughter's girlfriend and like allowing that to be okay. But it does get weaved through the whole thing. And I remember there's one of the first moments where you meet the like villain of the story, which is this character that has been manifested from Stephanie Hsu's character. Michelle Yeoh's character makes some sort of comment about her being gay. And they're like in the midst of a battle. And Stephanie Hsu's character is just like, really? That's still a problem in this world too? And that was interesting because there are differences to each world. But this is like something that has really just burrowed within Michelle Yeoh, is that like she cannot accept this about her daughter. The thing is, she's not like outwardly unaccepting of it. She's just sort of subtly hasn't come to terms with it and isn't fully on board in the way that she should be, in the way that her daughter wishes she was. And this is putting up this wall between them and making it so that their relationship really can't be fully formed. And now I'm going to talk about Stephanie Hsu, because she was so good in this movie. I sort of discovered her through her arc on the most recent seasons of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And I can't believe how long I didn't know about her, because she's so funny on that show and really has this ability to like deliver these fast quips that really just like, she just fits right into like the world of that show and the way that like the pace and the rhythm of Amy Sherman Palladino's way of writing. And so I've really enjoyed her on that show, but even on that show, she's still not like a main character. So it was really cool to get to see her really get to shine in this film as more of a lead, and all the different iterations of this character and the villain that this character is, and get to see her play and be like evil and be mean and be funny. And I feel like she really did a great job of capturing that sort of both inner and outer struggle of not connecting with your mom, both having already kind of settled into accepting that this is just the way things are, this is how she is, this is how you are, and you're just never going to be able to get past this, but also still wanting that and still longing for that connection. And I think that she captured all of the facets that exist within that inner struggle. And I can't wait to see what she does next, because she was so good in this. I enjoyed, just like from an aesthetic perspective, the way that they structured the film in parts and sort of had it kind of end midway through with what you assume was her death. And it was kind of like, is that the end of the movie? And then kind of took us back in. It was very much, in that way, a very formal film. It like knew it was a movie in a lot of ways. And that's always intriguing to me. I love a good, meta moment, a good fourth wall break. There wasn't really like a fourth wall break per se in this one. It's almost like they figured out how to be meta without doing that, which is really impressive because that is not an easy task. I already have had spoilers on this, so I just assume anybody watching this has seen the film, but I guess turn it off if you don't want a spoiler for what happens at the end. But one of the last sort of big like moments at the end of the film, as Stephanie Shu's character is being like sucked into the void. What could happen in this scene is that this is all about just like accepting that they'll never connect and that she's lost her forever, and just she's sort of just saying like, let me go. And it kind of feels like what has been building up is the fact that Michelle Yeoh's character can't let go of her daughter, and so the resolution would be to let her go. But they decide to take it a different direction. They kind of let her go, but then she's like, no, actually, wherever you are is where I want to be. And so they've sort of taken you on this journey, and they've taught you this lesson that's important to accept someone for who they are. And they've taken you to the place where you think this is where it's going to land, and you've kind of become satisfied with that being the ending of it, because that's the unselfish thing to do. It's just like, let the daughter go. But it's even more powerful when it turns into this thing about, no, I accept you. I know that we have things that we need to work through, but I want to do that. I want to be here. I want you to be in my life. I want to be in your life. And we're all still growing and we're all still figuring things out, but we can do it together. There's a place where we can all come together. Because it got to this point at the end where if she was able to let go of her daughter, she could join any of the universes that she had discovered on this journey. And there was this one universe that she kept coming back to, which was the one where she was basically Michelle Yeoh. She was this action star who'd become a movie star. And I'm pretty sure they even used footage from real like red carpets that she'd been at. And that was a really fun sort of meta arc within the story, was these bits of like, this is Michelle Yeoh being Michelle Yeoh, and how she kept reaching into that universe whenever she wanted to sort of escape what was going on. So you could tell that like innately her desire would be to join that universe. Even though that universe was a universe without her husband, without her daughter, there's still something very alluring about that life. So for her daughter to be like, you can literally be anything, go to any universe you want, but she wants this universe where she has the mundane life of running the laundromat because it's with the people that she loves. And I feel like in a lot of ways that ending is kind of predictable. I think that this is the kind of film where it's like, you go into it knowing that it's going to be all about like seeing all of the ways that your life can be and still choosing to be who you are. I think that theme was already kind of infused into everything that you're coming into this film with. But I still think it was a very satisfying ending. Like I said, there are so many things I could talk about with this movie. So much of it is about like this everything bagel, and there's a whole sequence where they're literally just rocks, and there's only subtitles on the screen because rocks don't really talk. But I really want like the hashtag just be a rock to start trending, because I think that was a brilliant line. There's hot dog fingers, there's elaborate costumes and crazy settings, and Jenny Slate is hilarious in this. I loved every time she would pop up. I didn't even talk about Raccacoonie. There's a scene where Michelle Yeoh's character is talking about being like a puppet, how each of them in every universe, like they're just being controlled by someone else. And she's trying to like come up with a metaphor that they'll understand what she's talking about, and she mentions Raccacoonie, which is that movie where the raccoon like pulls on the guy's hair and helps him like make soup. What's great about this is it's a great moment because it's so relatable to anyone who's had an interaction with someone who is trying to remember a movie and getting the details wrong. It's a funny moment. And it could just be that. It could just be like this funny little one-off moment that gives Stephanie Shu's character a chance to like laugh at her mom, being out of touch with media and whatever. But then the Daniels decided to use that and make one of the universes be this universe where Raccacoonie exists. And so you have Harry Shum Jr. playing a chef. You cut back to they're like in the kitchen and he's talking to this raccoon that was like on his head, and then he's like caught and the raccoon is like taken away, and so it becomes this whole like heist to get the raccoon back. That could have just been a one-off moment. It could have just been like a little one-liner just to have a little comic relief between the mom and the daughter. But instead, the Daniels were like, let's take this and run with it. Let's actually make this Raccacoonie thing happen. And so now Raccacoonie is a thing. So that was just, like I said, there's just so many little moments in this that are just gems. This is kind of like every filmmaker's dream, where you can kind of take all these different ideas you've had over the years and haven't been able to find a place for them, and then like plug them in here, because anything can exist within this movie. But at the heart of it is this really powerful story about connection and acceptance and being okay with the things that we don't connect on and still accepting each other. It's a film about family and about choosing your life, seeing what's out there, and realizing the value that exists in the life that has been laid out for you. There have been a few films, especially in recent years, that sort of validate the unseen beauty that exists in the mundane, in the mediocre. And I think that's really kind of a refreshing thing, because I feel like that's where most of us exist. You know, I think that we pine for things that just are unattainable, and that can be a really lonely and kind of pessimistic existence when you're constantly reaching for what you can't have because it's what society tells you should want. And so I love it that this film sort of celebrates not just being content with your life, but choosing the life that you have and sort of uncovering the specialness that already exists in your own world and in the people that you've surrounded yourself with. I think that is a needed message for all of us these days. Because there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world. And I think that escapism is important for us to be able to cope with a lot of things going on. And this film definitely gives you that. It gives you that escapism. But the theme of the film is that you can't rely on escapism to be the solution for your life. It's okay to escape for a bit and to see what else is out there. But in the end, we have to come back to reality and learn to appreciate what we have and not see it as we're stuck in this life. It's about being able to marvel at everything that we have achieved. The reason that Michelle Yeoh's character was sort of the chosen one in this world to be able to defeat the darkness that was encroaching was because of all of the sort of failed pathways in her life. It was like, because she had never been able to find her purpose and commit to something and pursue something that could have gotten her to all these different other places, it created this sort of web of all these different lives that she could have been leading, which gave her all these different skill sets. So it was almost like the film is saying that failure is not something to be ashamed of. It's actually kind of the gateway to realizing your most actualized self. It's like, because you tried this and moved on to something else, there's a potential there for you to be able to keep going in that world. In this other universe, maybe you went on and did this thing with that, and it did this, this, and this for you. So it's almost like telling people, try. Try all the different skills that you want to try, and don't regret or resent the paths that you didn't take. Because there are versions of you in the world that has been introduced by the Daniels. There are versions of you who are pursuing that path. And that's really kind of exciting to think about. I think it's very much about dormant dreams and getting to step into those for a little bit and sort of play. When you are first being introduced to the world that is the original world that they're in, and you see the little googly eyes on everything that are in like all of the advertisements and merchandise for this film, are those little googly eyes. And I wish I had one so I could have like had it here for this video, because it's just like pure fun and like childlike antics to put googly eyes on things. Michelle Yeoh's character has just like so latched into the adult side of things, and she's forgotten how to have fun and can't appreciate silliness. And so there's several arcs for her character within the story, and that's one of them, which is a really cool thing to explore. But yeah, so Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's the name of the film, and it is playing currently in theaters. I don't know if it's going to be on a streaming platform at some point in the near future, but because of like the scale of it, I would definitely recommend seeing it in the theater. And let's also, support Asian stories with our dollar by going to see it in theaters. And it's one you're going to want to see more than once, because there's just so much going on in this film. But yeah, so if you like this video and you want to hit that thumbs up, that'd be nice. And if you really like this video and you want to see other videos that I post on here, there's a little subscribe button there, and if you just click that, you'll become one of my subscribers and you'll get notified of when I'm posting new videos. Anyway, go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, and watch it a couple times so you can fully appreciate everything.